Hello, witchlings! So, who's into the Owl House right now? I, for one, am very much enjoying it. The crew is making some very impressive strides, and I am so thankful to both Dana Terrace and the crew for all that they are doing to create it. And with that in mind, there is a new character which both I and my partner, who has graciously agreed to help with the script for this video, would like to talk about, because this character represents something that I honestly wasn't expecting to see for at least another few years. This character, in case you didn't read the title, is Raine Whispers, the new head of the Bard Coven on the Boiling Isles, and also a potential love interest for Eda, and who also happens to be non-binary. So fun fact, this similar dynamic of identities is pretty much exactly what my relationship is like, and this possible flame that Eda and Raine have really made me realise something. This is the first on-screen relationship I have seen that reminds me of myself and my partner. There are some other very select few examples as well, but we'll get to those in a second. And for that reason, I just really wanted to go into this topic with them as an excuse to not just finally talk about the Owl House on my channel, but also because it really is something that just struck a chord with both of us, and I've been wanting to do a joint video with them for a while now. In this video, I will be talking about some things that we feel are important to highlight in relation to Raine's significance, not just in the Owl House, but on a broader scale of entertainment, and I'm hoping that this will show people just how important these types of characters are, because I think for a lot of people who aren't involved in this community, it can kind of come off as a bit gimmicky when that really is not the intention. We will be going over the episode in which they are introduced, Eda and Raine's relationship, a history of non-binary characters on screen, people's general perceptions of non-binary people as an identity, and so on. Please note that I myself am a cisgender woman, and while my partner is non-binary themselves, gender identity of any kind, much like sexuality, is a deeply personal experience. No one single story or individual is going to be exactly representative of every person. Thus, how Raine is perceived and how we may relate to them may be completely different to what you want to see on screen or what resonates with you. As a result, we can only speak about this from a very limited perspective, and we don't want to make it seem like we are making blanket statements about an entire community, so please understand this as we delve into this topic. As always, if you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. Okay, let's get into it. So, to begin, I'm going to quickly recap the episode Eda's Requiem in which Raine debuts, so that we're all up to speed on who Raine is, as well as their current and perceived role in the story. This will obviously contain some spoilers for that episode, so click away now if you don't want to be spoiled. The episode begins with Eda reflecting on her time with Luz and King, who are outside training for a flying competition known as the Grand Prix. Upon overhearing that King is thinking of moving out of the closet, which Eda interprets as moving out of the Owl House, Eda goes to put a photo of the three away in a chest, only to find her old lute. Or, actually, it kinda looks like a mandolin. Actually no, that's definitely a lute. After playing it for a moment, it seems that her magic is returning, but then it fades, only for a kind of corrupting force to seep into some affected objects. Later on, she is watching a live initiation of the new head of the Bard Coven, Raine Whispers, who is also shown to have immense stage fright. When Luz and King come inside to tell her about the competition, King also attempts to tell Eda about a plan of his, but she dodges the conversation. Later on, Eda is shown at a tavern, and sees the Emperor's guards trying to arrest a covenless witch. Eda steps in, but before the guard can retaliate, a band of rebel bards known as the Bards Against the Throne, or the Bats, step in to help, drawing the attention to them instead and allowing Eda to show them a way to escape. Once the group are safe, it's revealed that the leader of these rebels is Raine Whispers, who informs everyone that Eda was the inspiration for starting the group in the first place, and a flashback ensues showing them together years ago in a very obviously romantic setting, and it's very cute, I really like it. Raine then asks Eda to help in their endeavours, which she readily does. Eda, Raine and the Bats are then seen plotting to interrupt multiple raids by the Emperor's Coven, which is shown in a montage, after which the group go back to base and Eda asks Raine about becoming head bard, and Raine then asks Eda if she still knows any bard spells, to which she shows that the curse is affecting her magic. She then quickly leaves. Shortly after the Grand Prix begins, Raine contacts Eda about another raid and she leaves to join them. On their way to the location, the Bats are ambushed as Eda and Raine hide, and the other head witches Everwolf and Tyrius reveal themselves. Raine proceeds to convince Eda to use her old lute to disrupt the pursuer's magic, which works for a moment, but it then starts to engulf them as well. As Eda continues to play, the photo of Luz, Eda and King falls out of her hair and Raine asks if she has kids. Raine takes Eda's lute away as she falls to the ground, stating that she has people who depend on her, but the two are quickly captured after this. Eda escapes after Raine lets go and allows themselves to be captured in her place. After Eda returns to the Prix, the scene shifts back to the Coven heads. As they're watching the stream of King and Eda, Raine breaks free and tries to escape, only to be cornered by Kikimora and is then taken prisoner at the end of the episode. So with that short recap done, let's go over some things that we learned about Raine. So the very first thing we learn about Raine is that they are the new head bard, meaning that they are a highly skilled and respected witch. The second thing we learn is that they have really bad stage fright, but that honestly just makes their rank of head bard even more impressive. It also sends a really good message that you can succeed even if you have a lot of innate fear. The third thing we learn is that Raine has a rebellious spirit, as well as an established moral compass. And it's only after we learn all of this that we learn about Eda and Raine's previous connection. And the reason I bring this up is because this is still something that even cisgender and straight relationships struggle with on screen, and this, drumroll please, is giving substance to your character's romantic interests. Or to put it simply, treating them like people. Raine has an actual character and an actual life outside of being Eda's old flame, and I didn't want that to be overlooked. Now that we have a bit of background for Raine as an individual before we get to Eda and Raine's relationship, let's delve into a short exploration of non-binary characters in media. This will include how they are perceived, some typical tropes, and the impact that these perceptions and depictions may have overall. Now, it's important to note that non-binary is, in of itself, a mostly Western term. Many cultures have stories, both fictional and real-world accounts, of individuals who deviate from the gender norm, and they themselves deserve to have their stories told. For this reason, we will be primarily focusing on Western animation. For the most part, non-binary characters have been relegated to side roles, small cameos, or off-screen confirmation. So characters like Asher from Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, Kazi from The Dragon Prince, and Shep from Steven Universe are prime examples of this. These characters typically only appear for a select episode or even a select number of shots, but are never really brought into the limelight as an independent, multi-dimensional character. We also have a few tropes to consider regarding non-binary characters. One uses a term that we will coin as the magical other, or what is referred to on TV tropes as non-binary, non-human. This trope serves as a means of representing non-binary or other gender non-conforming elements without them being a part of the norm, i.e. usually human, society in fiction. We often see this attributed to robotic characters like Bimo from Adventure Time, or even entire other races, such as the Asari from the Mass Effect games, who are all monogendered, the Crystal Gems from Steven Universe, who are feminine aligned aliens made from hard light, or the Angels and Demons from Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman's Good Omens. I also happen to be guilty of this as well. The Guerin species in my comic synthesis happen to be unisex. And because I've done it myself, I can tell you that the reason a lot of people tend to do this, especially companies who run these kinds of shows and these kinds of games, is to avoid censorship. Unfortunately, the mainstream crowd still to this day have an issue with attributing any deviation from quote-unquote tradition as having an agenda. You know, as if that's always a bad thing. And whilst I would label each of these portrayals as successful in their own ways, especially with the support some of these creators put behind their portrayals, it still leaves the narrative of using a sense of otherness as an exercise in compassion, and this unfortunately still serves to push the narrative that being non-binary isn't normal. Characters like Stevonnie from Steven Universe, directed by non-binary showrunner Rebecca Sugar, have often been cited as progressive non-binary representation, and in many ways that can be agreed on, but at the end of the day, Stevonnie is made up of two individuals who, at least one of them, are confirmed cisgender, if not gender non-conforming. Stevonnie is a queer metaphor, albeit a very good metaphor, much like Garnet being a relationship, and a good queer relationship at that, but it doesn't really help the notion that this metaphor is made up of two seemingly non-queer people. Obviously that can be debated with Steven, but I digress. The crew tried their best to deliver what they could, and I am never going to denounce that just because something better came along a few years later. Another example is Double Trouble from She-Ra. Noel Stevenson, also a genderqueer creator, created a much more nuanced, less othered portrayal of a non-binary character. They may be a shapeshifter, but their pronouns are respected, they have a delightful personality, and no one on the show ever misuses their pronouns. However, Double Trouble does still fall into a common trope associated with non-binary characters, which we will refer to as the shape-shifting trickster. These characters have historically been known to shift between genders, and will often use this ability to sneak or swindle their way into getting what they want, and this trope unfortunately has the ripple effect where most notably visually androgynous people are seen as manipulative and sneaky, which just isn't true for the majority. I also want to just highlight another thing regarding Raine in particular. They appear to be more visually masculine presenting, and a common issue not just in media, but also in the community, as well as the general public, is that people only tend to accept non-binary and perceive it as a thing that only AFAB people can ascribe to. There was a post I saw years ago that really upset me, stating that an AMAB person was reduced to tears on their friend's floor because there was a non-binary meetup in their town, and they were barred from entry because they were believed to just be a man trying to sneak into a space that wasn't meant for them. I cannot tell you the amount of people I have seen and spoken to who just appear to have this perception that being non-binary is just a new brand name for the I'm not like other girls trope. I've seen the term woman light thrown around, and yeah, that is basically what people think, and it really needs to be reined in. Sorry, got a bit ranty, but I think this is another huge reason as to why Raine is so important. People lately have been commenting on the fact that most queer representation in media has been of AFAB people, and the reason for this is, say it with me fellas, misogyny and homophobia. I'm just gonna say it. So clearly we still have more work to do, and the only way we can do this is to just keep slowly but steadily getting our foot in the door, but also working together. Don't attack another group just because they have a bit more representation than you. We are all in the same boat, believe it or not. We need to help each other out. So, now that we got all of the boring preachy stuff out of the way, let's talk about the thing that people probably came to this video to hear about. Eda and Raine's relationship. We are going to kind of merge this section with why Raine as a character is important, because it does lead into that pretty well, and these two sections are much smaller than the previous one. So yeah, to date, I can only think of 2 confirmed non-binary characters who have romantic relationships in media. These include Sid and Elena from One Day at a Time, and Taylor Mason and Oscar Langstratt from the television show Billions. Janet from The Good Place may also qualify, as she is in a relationship with Jason, but just a quick note, I haven't actually watched The Good Place, so I don't really know about that one. One thing I do appreciate about Eda and Raine's relationship though is that it doesn't seem to be founded solely on a sense of fleeting infatuation. Eda actively changed the trajectory of Raine's life with the things that she said to them, and this in turn influenced a lot of how Raine views the world, including their ability to push through the stage fright and persevere within a corrupt system. And Eda even acknowledges this when they reconnect because she muses on how strong and how far they've come. It's important to note that Raine is romantic, but they pursued their own goals too. As seen in Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door, Raine was the one who ended the relationship with Eda due to being at the end of their tether with Eda constantly pushing them away. And this is important for a couple of reasons. For one, it's often a trope in romance stories that breakups are messy and are the fault of both sides, but with the added layer of a queer relationship, this becomes a bit more tricky. There's a narrative with queer folk that they have to be endlessly patient with cisgender/heterosexual folk to come around, and even though this isn't technically of that vein, seeing a character like Raine who is unapologetically putting their own well-being first, even if it hurts, was very important to showcase. Raine and Eda had a significant impact on each other's lives both during the romance and the lingering effects after the relationship ended. Eda inspired Raine to move forward despite their fear, and Raine in turn helped Eda to take a moment to stop running from their fear under the guise of the greater good. And this was a really important thing to see, because oftentimes a trope with queer characters is that, well, they're usually kind of socially awkward around the people they like, and this happens even with Luz and Amity in the exact same show. Seeing someone being so bold and brave, again, despite their stage fright, which now that I'm thinking of it feels so much like an allegory for being out, is such an important thing for not just non-binary kids and adults, but queer people overall. We love to see it. The way that Raine was introduced wasn't quiet, but not in the realm of Disney's previous hallmark queer representation, where every new hinted at gay character is Disney's big first, which... I'm just reading Lee's notes, and they've literally just written, "I hope you can feel my eye roll, Fee." Yeah, I can feel it, Lee, don't worry. Raine was introduced respectfully, not because of their gender identity, but rather as a person who has a role in the story, rather than a token avatar of genderqueer rep. Raine goes against the grain of acceptable non-binary representation. A vast majority of Western animated and live-action non-binary characters are young, AFAB, white, and they also typically fit an androgynous aesthetic. Raine, however, takes a different key with this, one that so many genderqueer kids need to see. They're a middle-aged POC with their gender identity a footnote in their current life. They have a career, past relationships, moral stances. They're an interesting character outside of their relationship to Eda and the main cast. Raine isn't a lesson, they are an example. Many queer characters are typically used in one-off special episodes to teach the main character. Raine isn't. They're just a person from Eda's past who happens to be non-binary. They're normal, a part of this world, and aren't used as an avatar for the growth of the presumably non-genderqueer characters for compassion for the other. They are a character that has been treated with respect. and therefore that is something to be celebrated. So yeah, that's the video. What do you guys think of Rain Whispers? Or better yet, what do you think of the characters in the Owl House? What do you think of queer representation, non-binary representation? Please let me know in the comments, and I will speak to you soon. Oh wait, actually I won't. I'm actually going to a wedding next week. A very small, socially distanced one, don't worry, within the guidelines. But yeah, after that I'm also going to be taking September off from all creative projects. I'm not going to be updating the comic, I'm not going to be uploading videos, I'm just going to have a total physical and mental refresh. But anyway, thank you so much again, and I will speak to you when my break is done.